Montana Territory, 1882. Wade Kincaid squinted against the rising sun, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon where the mountains met the sky in a jagged line. 5 years since Maria's passing, and the ranch still felt as hollow as his heart. At 26, he was younger than most widowers, but the weight of responsibility had aged him beyond his years. He adjusted his worn Stetson, brushing back a lock of sandy brown hair as he surveyed the land he'd fought to keep. "Pa, Billy's gone and put a frog in my shoe again." His daughter Emma's voice pierced the morning quiet, followed by his son's indignant denial. Wade sighed, turning from the fence post he'd been mending. In the harsh light of dawn, his weathered face betrayed little emotion, though his green eyes remained alert, watchful. 5 years of raising 2 children alone had taught him efficiency, if not tenderness. "Billy, leave your sister be," he called, setting down his hammer. "Both of you get ready. The schoolteacher's arriving today. The third schoolteacher in 8 months. The previous 2 hadn't lasted, one frightened away by the isolation of Silver Creek, the other by his children's unruly behavior. Wade didn't blame them. The frontier was no place for delicate city women, and love, well, love had no place in his life anymore. The wilderness had taken Maria in childbirth, leaving him with a newborn son and a 3-year-old daughter. All he wanted now was someone who could teach his children their letters and figures before they grew wild as the Montana landscape. A man out here needs only his land and his family to protect, he muttered to himself, the mantra he'd repeated since burying his wife on the hillside overlooking their modest ranch. Anything else is a distraction that gets you killed. As he strode toward the house, a sturdy 2-story structure he'd expanded over the years, Wade glanced at the children's eager faces pressed against the window. They needed more than he could give them. That much he knew. But bringing another woman into their lives meant risking heartbreak again, so he'd built walls higher than any fence on his property. The stagecoach wasn't due until noon, giving Wade time to finish his morning chores. By 11, he'd saddled his chestnut gelding and headed into town, leaving his ranch hand, Jasper, to watch the children. Silver Creek wasn't much, a single dusty street lined with essential businesses, general store, saloon, blacksmith, small hotel, and the doctor's office. The church doubled as the schoolhouse during weekdays. At the far end stood the sheriff's office, where his old friend Sheriff Tom Riley kept the peace. Wade tethered his horse outside the general store and nodded to Mrs. Peterson sweeping her porch. "Morning, ma'am. Wade Kincaid, you remembered the new teachers coming today? Good thing, too. You look almost presentable," she called, eyeing his clean shirt and freshly trimmed stubble. "Just being hospitable," he replied stiffly. Nothing more to it. Mrs. Peterson's knowing smile irritated him. The whole town seemed determined to see him remarried, as if a man couldn't raise children alone. But Wade knew better. The frontier took what it wanted, and he wouldn't offer his heart up for slaughter again. The distant rumble of the stagecoach pulled his attention to the road. Right on time, Wade positioned himself by the depot, arms crossed, expression neutral. Just business, that's all this was. Someone to educate his children, nothing more. The coach rolled to a stop in a cloud of dust. The driver secured the reins and jumped down to open the door. "Silver Creek," he announced. 30-minute stop before continuing to Helena. A gentleman in a suit exited first, followed by an elderly couple. Then a gloved hand appeared, and the world seemed to slow as Sophia Whitman stepped down onto Montana soil. She couldn't have been more than 21, her chestnut hair pinned beneath a modest bonnet, tendrils escaping to frame an oval face. Her traveling dress, though simple, was well made, its deep blue color bringing out eyes that reminded Wade of the mountain lakes in summer. She moved with a grace that seemed out of place in the dusty street, her posture straight but not rigid. "Miss Whitman." Wade approached, removing his hat. "Wade Kincaid. I'm here to collect you." She turned those remarkable eyes on him, and something in his chest shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Kincaid," she acknowledged with a slight bow of her head. "Thank you for meeting me. I hope the journey hasn't delayed my start too severely." Her voice carried the refined accent of the East, but lacked the condescension he'd expected. Wade found himself studying her face for signs of dismay at Silver Creek's modest appearance, but saw only curiosity. "No delay. School doesn't start till Monday," he replied, suddenly aware of how rough his voice sounded. I'll take you to the boarding house first, then show you the school. Actually, she said, gathering her courage, your letter mentioned quarters at your ranch? The school board chairman indicated I'd be staying with your family, given the distance to town. Wade stiffened. That was before I knew they'd hired someone, so he caught himself, but not before her eyebrow raised questioningly. Young, he finished lamely. I assure you, Mr. Kincaid, my age does not diminish my qualifications, she replied, a spark of determination flashing in those lake blue eyes. I graduated top of my class at the Teachers College in Boston. Unless you found alternative arrangements. Wade shifted uncomfortably, aware of curious onlookers. He had, in fact, agreed to board the teacher, expecting another stern-faced widow like the previous ones. The school was 5 miles from town, and dangerous for a woman to travel alone each day. But having this young woman living under his roof seemed like inviting trouble. The arrangement stands, he finally said, his expression betraying nothing of his inner turmoil. We've prepared a room. Your reputation will be safe. My housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, lives with us. Relief softened her features. Thank you. I've come a long way for this position. As Wade loaded her trunks into his wagon, Sheriff Riley strolled over, tipping his hat. Miss Whitman, welcome to Silver Creek. I see you've met our most eligible bachelor already. Wade shot him a warning glare. Sheriff, she acknowledged with a polite smile. I've met my employer, yes. Don't let his scowl frighten you, Riley continued, ignoring Wade's deepening frown. He wasn't always such a bear. Just needs the right woman to remind him there's more to life than fence posts and cattle. That's enough, Tom, Wade cut in. Miss Whitman isn't here for your matchmaking. The sheriff chuckled, backing away. Just saying hello. You folks have a pleasant afternoon. The ride to the ranch passed in strained silence, broken only by Sophia's occasional questions about the school and students. Wade answered tersely, keeping his eyes on the road. Having her beside him on the wagon seat, the scent of lavender barely detectable beneath the dust of travel, made him acutely aware of how long it had been since he'd spoken to a woman who wasn't Mrs. Peterson or Mrs. Abernathy. Your children, she ventured, when they turned onto the long drive toward his ranch. Tell me about them. Something in her gentle tone loosened Wade's rigid posture slightly. Emma's 8. Smart, but headstrong. Billy's 5, full of mischief. Both need a firmer hand than I've given them lately. And their mother? She asked softly. Died birthing my son. The words came out flatter than he intended. I'm sorry. Her simple response held genuine sympathy without pity. Wade nodded once, then pointed ahead. That's the ranch. Sophia took in the 2-story house with its wide porch, the neat barn and corral, the garden plot fenced against wildlife. Not as grand as some eastern properties, but impressive for the territory. Evidence of a man who worked hard and took pride in his holdings. As they approached, 2 small figures burst from the house, racing toward the wagon. Pa, is she here? Is she nice? Emma called, her dark braids flying behind her. Billy followed, his shorter legs working twice as hard. Children, Wade said as he brought the wagon to a halt. This is Miss Whitman, your new teacher. Mind your manners now. Sophia set aside her fatigue and smiled warmly at the children. Hello, Emma, Billy. I'm very pleased to meet you both. Emma studied her suspiciously. Are you going to leave like the others? Emma, Wade admonished. It's all right, Sophia assured him before addressing the girl. I don't plan to leave, Emma. I've come a very long way to be your teacher. Can you read stories? Billy asked, his blue eyes, so like his father's, wide with hope. Many stories, Sophia promised. Would you like to help me with my bags? Teachers need strong assistance. The simple request transformed the children's wariness into eager cooperation. Wade watched in surprise as his typically recalcitrant offspring vied for the honor of carrying Sophia's smallest valise. The sun caught her hair as she bent to speak with Billy, revealing auburn highlights Wade hadn't noticed before. Something about her patient manner with the children made his throat tighten unexpectedly. He turned away, busying himself with the heavier trunks. The wilderness is no place for attachment, he reminded himself silently as he carried her belongings inside. She's just here to teach. Nothing more. But as Sophia Whitman crossed the threshold of his home, something shifted in the atmosphere of the ranch that had been merely a place of work and duty for 5 long years. Wade couldn't name it, but it unsettled him like distant thunder before a storm. Later that evening, after showing Sophia to her quarters, a modest but comfortable room at the opposite end of the hall from his own, Wade sat on the porch, watching darkness claim the valley. Inside, he could hear her voice reading to his children, the cadence rising and falling like music. It had been so long since such sounds filled the house that he found himself listening despite his determination to maintain distance. Dangerous, he murmured to the night sky, getting used to someone who'll leave when winter comes. But even as he thought it, Wade couldn't deny that for the first time in years, his house felt something like a home again. The first days of Sophia's presence established a routine that both comforted and disturbed Wade. Each morning, she'd be at the breakfast table before sunrise, her hair neatly pinned, ready to help Mrs. Abernathy with the meal. She'd walk the children to the schoolhouse, a small building Wade had erected a quarter-mile from the main house, and return in the afternoon to help with chores before dinner. It was during the second week, when Wade was passing the schoolhouse at midday, that he paused, drawn by the sound of laughter. Through the window, he glimpsed Sophia standing before a slate, acting out what appeared to be a bear while the children giggled helplessly. "And this," she was saying in a growling voice, "is how the letter B reminds us of the mighty bear." Wade found himself smiling for the first time in recent memory. He quickly resumed his stern expression when she glanced toward the window, but not before she'd caught his momentary lapse. That evening at dinner, Billy couldn't contain his excitement. "Pa, Miss Whitman says I'm the quickest learner she's ever taught. I can write all my letters." "Is that so?" Wade replied, looking at Sophia with undisguised skepticism. She met his gaze evenly. "Billy has remarkable focus when properly motivated. Emma, too, has made excellent progress with her arithmetic. She makes learning fun, Pa," Emma added. "Not like old Mrs. Crankshaw who rapped our knuckles." Wade frowned at the reminder of the previous teacher's harsh methods. "Well, that's good then." Later, when the children had gone to bed, Wade found Sophia on the porch, gazing at the stars. He'd meant to walk past, to maintain the careful distance he'd established, but something made him pause. "The children seem different with you," he said awkwardly. Sophia smiled, though her eyes remained on the night sky. "Children respond to being seen, Mr. Kincaid, not just instructed." "Wade," he corrected, surprising himself. "If you're living here, you might as well use my given name." She looked at him then, her expression thoughtful. "Wade," she repeated softly. "And I'm Sophia." A silence fell between them, not entirely uncomfortable. "Why did you come out here?" he finally asked. "A woman with your education could teach anywhere. Why choose the frontier?" Sophia's gaze returned to the stars. "Perhaps I'm running from something, just as you're hiding from something." Wade stiffened. "I'm not hiding. Aren't you?" Her voice held no judgment, only quiet certainty. "This land is beautiful, but it's also a convenient place to avoid living." "You don't know anything about me," he said sharply. "I know you love your children fiercely," she replied, unfazed by his tone. "I know you work from sunrise to sunset. I know you've built something impressive here." She paused. "And I know loneliness when I see it, because it's familiar." Wade wanted to walk away, to retreat from this conversation that probed too close to truths he'd buried alongside Maria. Instead, he found himself asking, "What are you running from then?" A shadow crossed her features. Expectations. In Boston, my path was predetermined. Marry well, host parties, be an ornament. Teaching was acceptable only until a suitable match was found. She shook her head. "I wanted more. I wanted purpose." Wade studied her profile in the moonlight, seeing something he recognized, determination forged in disappointment. "The frontier isn't kind to dreams," he said quietly. "Neither is anywhere else," she replied. "At least here, the dangers are honest. They don't wear polite smiles while they trap you." The insight surprised him. Before he could respond, a coyote's howl echoed across the valley, reminding them of the wilderness beyond the porch light's glow. "I should check the livestock," Wade said, retreating to familiar ground. "Good night, Wade," Sophia said, her voice following him into the darkness. That night, he dreamed of Maria for the first time in months. But when he reached for her in the dream, she smiled sadly and shook her head, pointing him towards something he couldn't quite see. The following Sunday, Wade drove the family to church in Silver Creek. He'd avoided regular attendance since Maria's death, finding little comfort in sermons about God's plan. But Sophia had gently suggested it would be good for the children, and he'd found himself agreeing before he could consider why. The small white chapel was nearly full when they arrived. Heads turned as Wade Kincaid walked in with his children and the new schoolteacher. Mrs. Peterson nudged her husband knowingly, while Sheriff Riley didn't bother hiding his approving grin. "Folks sure are interested in you," Wade muttered as he ushered Sophia toward a pew. "I believe their interest lies more in seeing you in church, Wade," she whispered back, a hint of amusement in her voice. The service passed pleasantly enough, though Wade found his attention wandering, not to the worries of ranch life as usual, but to the woman beside him, her clear voice joining the hymns with surprising strength. Billy fell asleep against her shoulder during the sermon, and she'd simply adjusted her position to make him more comfortable, continuing to listen attentively. After the service, Reverend Clark approached. "Wade, good to see you. And this must be Miss Whitman. I've heard wonderful things about your teaching already." "Reverend," Sophia acknowledged with a smile. "You have a lovely congregation." "We're small but dedicated," the Reverend replied. "I hope you'll consider joining our Ladies' Aid Society. They meet Thursdays." Before she could answer, Mrs. Peterson swooped in. "Oh, you simply must join us, dear. And perhaps you could help with the Harvest Festival next month? We need someone with fresh ideas." Wade watched as Sophia was surrounded by the town's women, all clearly delighted to have new blood in their circle. Something tightened in his chest, a feeling he couldn't immediately identify. Pride in how well she was received, or concern that she might find more reasons to spend time in town, away from the ranch, away from them. The thought disturbed him more than it should have. "She's fitting in well," Sheriff Riley commented, appearing at Wade's side. "Better than you expected, I'd wager." Wade grunted noncommittally. "Your children look happier too," Riley continued, undeterred. "Billy's even combed his hair." "Tom, whatever you're implying, I'm not implying anything," the sheriff interrupted, raising his hands innocently. "Just observing that sometimes what we think we want isn't what we need." Before Wade could respond, Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Pa, Miss Whitman says we're invited to dinner at the hotel. Mrs. Peterson arranged it for all the teachers to welcome her." Wade hesitated, torn between the desire to return to his ranch and the reluctance to disappoint the hopeful faces of his children. And, he admitted to himself, the schoolteacher who was now looking at him questioningly. Just for a little while, he conceded. The impromptu welcome dinner stretched longer than Wade had anticipated. Sophia charmed the townsfolk with stories of her journey west, deftly avoiding personal questions while showing genuine interest in Silver Creek and its inhabitants. Wade found himself watching her more than participating, struck by how different she was from the withdrawn, grief-stricken man he'd become. The afternoon sun was lowering when they finally headed home. The children, exhausted from socializing, dozed in the back of the wagon while Sophia sat beside Wade, a contented silence between them. "Thank you," she said after a while, "for staying. I know you would have preferred to leave earlier." Wade glanced at her. "How do you know that?" A smile played at her lips. "You checked your pocket watch 17 times. He couldn't help the short laugh that escaped him. "Didn't realize I was so transparent." "Not transparent," she corrected. "Just observed." The way she said it made his neck warm. He focused on the road ahead. "Town gatherings aren't really my area." "Yet you stayed," she noted. "For the children?" "Partly," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "And partly because you seemed to be enjoying yourself." Her eyes widened slightly at his confession. "I was. It's nice to feel welcomed." Wade nodded, understanding more than he cared to admit. After Maria died, the town had tried to help, but he'd rejected their overtures, preferring isolation to their pitying glances. Now, watching Sophia embrace the community he'd withdrawn from made him wonder what he'd missed in those years of self-imposed exile. As they turned onto the ranch road, the setting sun bathed the landscape in golden light. Sophia gasped softly at the beauty of it, the mountains purple in the distance, the meadows glowing, the trees casting long shadows. "I've never seen anything like this," she breathed. Wade looked at the land through her eyes and felt a forgotten pride stir in his chest. "It's why I stay," he said simply, "even when it's hard." Their eyes met briefly, and something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, that beneath their different exteriors, they shared something essential, a determination to build meaning from difficulty. The moment was broken by Billy stirring in the back, rubbing his eyes, and asking sleepily if they were home yet. But that night, as Wade completed his evening chores, the word echoed in his mind. Home. For the first time in 5 years, the ranch felt like more than a place of work and obligation. The dangerous thought followed him into uneasy dreams. October brought cooler temperatures and the first dusting of snow on the distant peaks. Sophia had been with them for nearly 2 months now, establishing herself as an exceptional teacher and becoming increasingly indispensable to the household. She'd taken over much of the children's care, freeing Mrs. Abernathy to focus on cooking and mending, and even Wade had to admit the ranch ran more smoothly with her organized approach. What he wouldn't admit, even to himself, was how he'd begun finding reasons to be near the schoolhouse during lessons, or how dinner had become his favorite time of day as he listened to Sophia and the children discuss what they'd learned. "You're sweet on her," Jasper observed one afternoon as they mended fences together. Wade nearly missed the nail he was hammering. "Don't be ridiculous." The older ranch hand shrugged. "Ain't ridiculous to care for someone, boss. Especially someone as fine as Miss Whitman." "She's the children's teacher," Wade replied firmly. "Nothing more." "If you say so," Jasper replied, unconvinced. "But I ain't seen you look at anyone that way since Maria." Wade drove the next nail with unnecessary force. "Drop it, Jasper." But the seed had been planted, and Wade found himself increasingly aware of his reactions to Sophia. How his pulse quickened when she entered a room. How he noticed the changing highlights in her hair as autumn progressed. How her laugh seemed to warm something long cold within him. It was dangerous territory. Caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability on the frontier was how you got broken. Wade had learned that lesson when he'd found Maria collapsed in their bedroom, bleeding heavily after Billy's difficult birth. By the time the doctor arrived from town, it had been too late. The memory still haunted him. Her pale face, his helplessness, the terrible silence afterward. No, better to keep walls firmly in place. Sophia would complete her year of teaching and move on, possibly to a larger town with more opportunities. Getting attached would only ensure more pain. But his resolve was tested when Emma came down with a high fever in late October. Wade had been away, securing a nearby property line with Jasper, when a ranch hand rode out to find him. "It's Miss Emma, boss," the young man reported breathlessly. "Took sick sudden-like. Miss Whitman sent me to fetch you and the doctor." Wade's blood ran cold. "How bad?" "Don't rightly know, sir. She was burning up something fierce when I left." Wade was on his horse immediately, shouting for Jasper to get the doctor from town while he rode hard for the ranch. The 15-minute ride seemed endless, his mind cycling through worst possibilities. Not Emma. Not like Maria. Not again. When he burst through the door, he found Sophia in Emma's room, bathing the girl's forehead with cool cloths. Emma's face was flushed, her breathing shallow. "What happened?" Wade demanded, kneeling beside the bed. "She complained of a headache after lunch," Sophia explained, her voice steady despite the worry in her eyes. "Within an hour, she was burning with fever. I've been trying to bring it down with cool compresses." Wade touched his daughter's cheek, alarm spreading through him at the heat radiating from her skin. "Where's Billy?" "With Mrs. Abernathy in the kitchen. I didn't want him to catch whatever this might be." Wade nodded, grateful for her foresight. "The doctor's coming." Sophia continued her methodical care, speaking softly to Emma when she stirred restlessly. Wade watched her capable hands, the gentle firmness of her touch, and felt a surge of gratitude that threatened to overwhelm him. "You should eat something," she said after a while, noticing his drawn expression. "You can't help her if you collapse." "I'm fine," he insisted. "I need to be here." Sophia's eyes softened. "I understand, but I'll stay with her either way." The night stretched interminably. The doctor finally arrived near sunset, examining Emma with grave concentration before announcing it was likely influenza. "Keep her cool, get fluids in her when possible," he instructed. "The fever's the most dangerous part. If it breaks by morning, she should recover." After he left, Wade and Sophia established a rhythm. One would rest briefly while the other maintained the cooling cloths, then switch. Neither would leave Emma for long, though Mrs. Abernathy brought food they barely touched. In the darkest hours before dawn, when the house was silent but for Emma's labored breathing, Wade found himself speaking of Maria. "She died like this," he said quietly, "burning with fever after Billy was born. I couldn't save her. Sophia looked up from where she sat beside the bed. Wade, I'm so sorry. I was helpless, he continued, the words coming from some long-sealed place within him. Watched her slip away while I could do nothing. Swore I'd never put myself in that position again. Understanding dawned in Sophia's eyes. So you shut everything out except work and the children. He nodded, unable to meet her gaze. Safer that way. Safer, perhaps, she agreed softly. But not living. She hesitated, then reached across Emma to touch his hand. And it doesn't actually protect you from pain, does it? Not when Emma falls ill, or when Billy needs you. The simple truth of her words, and the warm pressure of her hand on his, broke something in Wade's carefully constructed defenses. He closed his eyes against sudden moisture. I don't know how to do this, he admitted hoarsely. Any of it. None of us do, Sophia replied. We just try. Together. That single word, together, hung in the air between them, filled with possibility and terror in equal measure. Before he could respond, Emma stirred, mumbling incoherently. They both turned their attention back to her, the moment suspended but not forgotten. Near dawn, Emma's fever finally broke. Wade felt her forehead and nearly collapsed with relief when he found it cool and damp with healthy sweat. Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she smiled across at him. She's going to be all right, she whispered. In that moment of shared relief, something fundamental shifted between them. Wade looked at this woman who had stayed through the night, who had cared for his daughter with unwavering dedication, who had seen his fear and hadn't turned away, and knew with sudden clarity that his careful isolation had been breached beyond repair. As October gave way to November, Wade found himself fighting a losing battle against his growing feelings for Sophia. Emma's recovery had been swift, but the night of her illness had created an unspoken intimacy between teacher and rancher that neither acknowledged directly. The children noticed the change. Billy had taken to asking Sophia to sit beside their father at dinner, while Emma watched them with speculative eyes that missed nothing. Pa likes you, she informed Sophia matter-of-factly one afternoon as they gathered eggs from the henhouse. Sophia nearly dropped the basket. Emma, he does, the girl insisted. He smiles when you're not looking. And he fixed the loose floorboard in the schoolhouse without you even asking. Sophia busied herself with the eggs, hoping her flushed cheeks might be attributed to the crisp autumn air. Your father is simply being considerate. He's responsible for the buildings on his property. Emma gave her a look of profound skepticism that was so like Wade's expression that Sophia had to suppress a smile. Do you like him back? The girl pressed. I respect your father very much, Sophia replied carefully. Emma rolled her eyes. That's not what I asked. Sophia was saved from responding by Mrs. Abernathy calling them for lunch. But the conversation stayed with her, forcing her to confront feelings she'd been trying to ignore. She hadn't come to Montana looking for romance. After rejecting a suitable but loveless match in Boston, and the subsequent family discord, Sophia had sought independence and purpose. Teaching had always been her passion, and the frontier offered opportunities for women to build lives beyond society's narrow expectations. What she hadn't expected was Wade Kincaid, a man whose gruff exterior concealed depths of feeling, whose devotion to his children and land spoke of a capacity for love that transcended his determination to deny it. She hadn't expected to find herself thinking of him at odd moments, or feeling a flutter of anticipation when he returned from working the range. Most of all, she hadn't expected to find a place where she felt she truly belonged. The Harvest Festival in mid-November brought these confused feelings to a head. The entire community gathered in the town hall, which had been decorated with autumn bounty, pumpkins, corn husks, and colorful leaves. Tables groaned under potluck dishes, while fiddle music encouraged dancing. Sophia had helped organize the children's activities, teaching them harvest songs and simple dances. Wade had been distant all day, disappearing to talk with other ranchers while she supervised the games. But she felt his eyes on her repeatedly, a weight that both thrilled and unsettled her. As evening approached, the music shifted to a waltz. Sheriff Riley appeared at Sophia's side with a conspirator's grin. Miss Whitman, would you honor me with this dance? Before she could respond, Wade materialized from the crowd, his expression unreadable. Actually, Tom, I believe Miss Whitman promised this dance to me. Sophia blinked in surprise. They had discussed no such arrangement, but the intensity in Wade's eyes made her heart skip. Sheriff Riley stepped back with a knowing smile. By all means, he said, tipping his hat. Don't let me interfere. Wade offered his hand, and Sophia took it, allowing him to lead her onto the floor. His other hand settled at her waist, maintaining a proper distance while still creating a circle of intimacy amid the crowd. I didn't realize I'd promised you a dance, she said softly as they began to move with the music. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You hadn't, but I couldn't watch Tom Riley monopolize your evening. Is that so? She replied, surprise giving way to pleasure at his admission. And why would that concern you, Mr. Kincaid? The formality was deliberate, a reminder of boundaries that seemed increasingly irrelevant. Wade's hand tightened slightly at her waist. Because I've been a fool, Miss Whitman. Her breath caught at the raw honesty in his voice. A fool, she echoed, thinking I could keep you at arm's length, believing that not caring was somehow safer. His eyes held hers, no longer guarded. It's not working. Around them, other couples swirled, but Sophia was aware only of Wade. The warmth of his hand through her dress, the faint scent of sandalwood soap, the vulnerability beneath his steady gaze. What are you saying, Wade? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He drew a deep breath. I'm saying that you came to teach my children, but you've taught me something I thought I'd forgotten. How to? A commotion at the entrance cut him off. The music faltered as Sheriff Riley strode quickly toward the doors where a breathless young man was gesturing urgently. Wade tensed, his attention diverted. The spell broken, he released Sophia as Riley approached them. Wade, the sheriff said grimly, there's trouble. Fire spotted near your north pasture. Jenkins here rode in to warn you. Cold dread replaced the warmth that had been building in Sophia's chest. Wade was already moving, his expression transformed from openness to focused determination. How bad? He demanded. Don't know yet, the young ranch hand replied. Saw the glow from the ridge line. Could be heading toward the house if the wind shifts. Where are my children? Wade asked, scanning the crowd. With Mrs. Peterson, Sophia assured him. I'll find them. Wade nodded. Keep them in town until you hear from me. Men were already gathering, organizing themselves into firefighting parties. Wade turned back to Sophia, conflict evident in his eyes. So much left unsaid between them. Go, she urged. We'll be fine. He reached for her hand briefly, squeezing it with wordless intensity before joining the men rushing toward the door. Sophia watched him go, the unfinished conversation hanging in the air like the last notes of the interrupted waltz. The fire proved less devastating than feared. A lightning strike had ignited dry brush in the north pasture, but quick action contained it before it could threaten the ranch buildings. Still, Wade and his men spent a grueling night battling the blaze, returning to town haggard and smoke-stained by morning. Sophia had stayed at Mrs. Peterson's with the children, who had finally fallen asleep near dawn. When Wade appeared at the door, exhaustion etched in every line of his face, she felt such relief it nearly overwhelmed her. The ranch? She asked quietly, stepping outside to speak without waking the children. Safe, he assured her. Lost some fencing and about 10 acres of grazing land, but it could have been much worse. And you? Her eyes searched his face, noting the soot smudges and reddened eyes. A tired smile touched his lips. I'll live. Nothing a bath and sleep won't cure. They stood in silence for a moment, the interrupted dance and conversation hanging between them. But this wasn't the time or place to resume it. Not with Wade dead on his feet and half the town beginning to stir around them. Get some rest, she said gently. I'll bring the children home this afternoon. He nodded, then hesitated. Sophia, about last night. Later, she interrupted, touching his arm briefly. When you're not about to collapse. The grateful look he gave her confirmed she'd made the right decision. Some conversations deserved better than exhaustion and haste, but later proved elusive. The aftermath of the fire kept Wade occupied with repairs, while the approach of Thanksgiving meant additional duties for Sophia at the school. They circled each other cautiously, their daily interactions cordial but restrained, neither quite ready to venture back to the vulnerability of that dance. It was Billy who inadvertently forced the issue. One evening in late November, as they finished dinner, he looked between Sophia and his father with childish directness. Pa, is Miss Whitman gonna be our new ma? Wade choked on his coffee. Emma kicked her brother under the table, though her expression suggested she'd been wondering the same thing. Billy, Mrs. Abernathy scolded from the kitchen doorway. That's not a proper question. Sophia felt heat climb her neck as Wade struggled to compose himself. The children watched expectantly, unaware of the complexity they'd stumbled into. Miss Whitman is your teacher, Wade finally managed, his voice carefully neutral. She's here to educate you. Billy's face fell. But she lives with us. And she takes care of us when we're sick. And you look at her like Mr. Jenkins looks at Miss Sarah in town. Emma nodded emphatically. He means like you're sweet on her, Pa. Wade's eyes met Sophia's across the table, a silent communication passing between them. Equal parts embarrassment and recognition that they couldn't continue avoiding what had begun at the Harvest Festival. Children, Sophia said gently. Relationships between adults are complicated. Why? Billy persisted. Don't you like Pa? Billy, that's enough, Wade said, more firmly now. Go wash up for bed. The children reluctantly obeyed, though not without backward glances that promised the subject wasn't permanently closed. When they had gone upstairs, an awkward silence descended on the dining room. Mrs. Abernathy tactfully retreated to the kitchen, leaving Wade and Sophia alone with the remnants of dinner and the unavoidable conversation. I apologize for Billy, Wade began. He doesn't understand. It's all right, Sophia interrupted. Children see things clearly sometimes. Too clearly for our comfort. Wade studied her face, searching for clues to her thoughts. Is that what happened? Have they seen something we've been avoiding? The directness of his question took her breath away. This was the moment to retreat to safety, to maintain the professional distance that had been her original intention. Instead, Sophia found herself answering with equal honesty. I think they have, she admitted softly. But I'm not certain what to do about it. Wade's expression softened. Neither am I. I never expected. He paused, seeming to gather courage. I never expected to feel this way again. After Maria, I convinced myself that closing off that part of my life was the only way to survive. And now? Sophia asked, her heart beating rapidly. Now I find myself wondering if survival is enough. His eyes held hers, no longer guarded. The night of the festival, before the fire, I was trying to tell you that you've taught me something important. How to see possibility again. How to want more than just getting through each day. Sophia's throat tightened with emotion. Wade. A crash from upstairs interrupted her, followed immediately by Billy's wail. They both jumped up, the moment broken yet again as they rushed to investigate. Billy had pulled down a shelf while attempting to reach a toy, resulting in a minor cut and a major mess. By the time they'd cleaned up, bandaged the wound, and settled both children, the intimate atmosphere had dissipated, replaced by the practical concerns of household management. Yet something had changed. Wade's admission hung between them, acknowledged but unresolved. As November drew to a close, bringing the first serious snowfall, Sophia found herself at a crossroads. Her feelings for Wade had grown beyond what she could dismiss or deny. She loved his children as if they were her own. She loved the ranch with its vast horizons and changing seasons. Most of all, she loved the man Wade was beneath his careful reserve, thoughtful, honorable, capable of profound devotion. But uncertainty plagued her. Was she simply convenient, a woman already in his home, good with his children? Would he have looked twice at her if circumstances hadn't thrown them together? And even if his feelings were genuine, could a man who had locked away his heart truly open it again? The answer came unexpectedly, on a bitter December evening when a blizzard howled across the Montana landscape. Sophia had stayed late at the schoolhouse, preparing for the Christmas pageant, unaware of the rapidly deteriorating weather until it was nearly upon her. She was gathering materials when the door burst open, bringing a swirl of snow and Wade Kincaid. You need to come now, he said urgently. Storms worsening faster than expected. One look at his face told her this was serious. She quickly gathered her things, and Wade helped her into her heavy coat before leading her outside. The wind nearly took her breath away. In the hour she'd been focused on her work, the world had transformed into a whiteout of driving snow. Wade kept a firm grip on her arm as they struggled toward the ranch house, the short distance now treacherous in the blinding conditions. Halfway there, Sophia stumbled in a hidden drift, crying out as her ankle twisted painfully beneath her. Without hesitation, Wade swept her into his arms. Hold on to me, he ordered, his voice barely audible above the wind. Sophia clung to his neck, her face pressed against his shoulder as he carried her the remaining distance. The warmth and solidity of him contrasted sharply with the chaotic storm around them, creating an island of safety amid danger. When they finally reached the house, Mrs. Abernathy exclaimed in alarm at their snow-covered appearance. The children, already in nightclothes, rushed forward with questions. "It's just a turned ankle," Sophia assured them as Wade set her carefully on the sofa. "Your father rescued me before the storm could carry me away." While Mrs. Abernathy prepared hot drinks and Wade built up the fire, Sophia distracted the children with stories until their eyelids began to droop. Despite their protests, Wade insisted on bedtime, carrying each child upstairs with promises that Miss Whitman would still be there in the morning. When he returned, Mrs. Abernathy had retired to her room, leaving them alone in the firelit parlor. Sophia's ankle, elevated on cushions, had begun to swell despite the cold compress applied earlier. "Let me look at it," Wade said, kneeling beside the sofa. His gentle hands examined her injury with careful attention. "Not broken, I think, but you'll need to stay off it for a few days." Sophia nodded, acutely aware of his proximity and the intimacy of his touch. "Thank you for coming to find me." He looked up, his expression serious. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I didn't expect the storm to worsen so quickly," she admitted. Wade's hand stilled on her ankle. "That's not what I meant. Did you think I wouldn't come for you specifically? That I'd leave you to fend for yourself?" The question carried weight beyond the immediate situation. Sophia met his gaze steadily. "No," she said quietly. "I know you better than that." Something in his face softened. "Do you? Because I'm not sure I've let you see who I really am." "Not completely." The crackling fire and howling wind created a cocoon around them, a private world where truth seemed not only possible but necessary. "Then show me," she challenged softly. Wade moved to sit beside her on the sofa, careful of her injured ankle. In the firelight, his features were both familiar and new, the strength she'd always seen, but also vulnerability he rarely revealed. "I've been afraid," he began, his voice low. "Not of the work or the land, or even raising the children alone. Those things are hard, but straightforward." He paused, struggling for words. "I've been afraid of this, of feeling something I can't control, of caring so much that losing it would destroy me." Sophia's heart ached at his admission. "Wade, let me finish," he said gently. "When Maria died, I thought the safest path was to close that door completely, to focus only on what I could manage and protect. And it worked, after a fashion. I survived." His eyes held hers with newfound courage. "But then you arrived, and suddenly survival wasn't enough anymore." He reached for her hand, enfolding it in his larger one. "You came to teach my children, Sophia, but you've taught me instead. About courage that has nothing to do with facing physical danger. About how loving isn't safe, but it's the only thing that makes life worth the risks we take." Tears gathered in Sophia's eyes at words that echoed her own journey. "I didn't come here looking for this," she confessed. "After leaving Boston, I wanted independence, purpose, not to lose my heart to a stubborn rancher and his wonderful children." A smile touched his lips. "Stubborn? Impossibly so," she confirmed, returning his smile through gathering tears. "And brave, and honorable, and far more tender than you let most people see." Wade's free hand rose to brush a tear from her cheek, his touch reverent. "I love you, Sophia. I think I have since that night you stayed up with Emma, when you saw my fear and didn't turn away. I just couldn't admit it, even to myself." The words she'd longed to hear but hadn't dared expect hung in the air between them, more powerful than the storm raging outside. Sophia felt something final shift into place, the certainty that this man, this family, this life was where she belonged. "I love you too," she whispered. "Enough to face whatever comes, together." Wade's eyes darkened with emotion as he leaned toward her. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and answer both. When they parted, the wonder in his expression mirrored what Sophia felt, that something precious and unexpected had found them when neither was looking. Outside, the blizzard continued its fury, but within the ranch house, something weathered and guarded had finally thawed, making way for new growth. The Christmas season transformed the Kincaid ranch. Sophia, despite her injured ankle, directed operations from various chairs as Wade and the children decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons. Billy and Emma threw themselves into preparations with unprecedented enthusiasm, whispering secrets and disappearing on mysterious errands that made Wade raise questioning eyebrows at Sophia, who merely smiled. "Let them have their mysteries," she said one evening as they sat together after the children had gone to bed. "Christmas should hold wonder, especially for children." Wade's arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, a closeness that still felt new and miraculous. "They've changed since you came," he observed. "Happier, more settled. Children respond to stability and love," Sophia replied, leaning against him. "They've always had your love, but now they feel secure in it." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Because of you." The school's Christmas pageant became the focal point of the season. Sophia had written a simple play incorporating every child, ensuring even the shyest had lines to speak. Emma played an angel, while Billy, to his immense pride, was cast as a shepherd with an important proclamation. On the night of the performance, the schoolhouse overflowed with parents and townsfolk. Wade sat in the front row, his usual reserve replaced by obvious pride as his children performed their parts flawlessly. When Billy delivered his line, "Behold, I bring you tidings of great joy," in a voice that carried to the rafters, Wade's face split in a grin that Sophia thought might outshine the Christmas star itself. Afterward, as families mingled over cider and cookies, Sheriff Riley approached Wade with a knowing smile. "Quite a change from the man who barely spoke to anyone 6 months ago," he observed, nodding toward where Wade had been enthusiastically discussing the performance with other parents. "Tom," Wade began, prepared to deflect. "It's good," the sheriff interrupted. "Damn good. About time you rejoined the living." The simplicity of the statement struck Wade deeply. He glanced across the room where Sophia was helping Billy adjust his shepherd's headdress, her face animated as she spoke with him. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "It is time." Christmas Eve brought a perfect winter day, snow-covered landscape glittering under bright sunshine, the temperature mild enough for outdoor activities. Wade had disappeared early, citing ranch business, leaving Sophia to finish preparations with the children and Mrs. Abernathy. By afternoon, delicious smells filled the house as special dishes were prepared for the evening meal. When Wade returned, his expression held barely contained excitement that immediately aroused Sophia's curiosity. Before she could question him, he announced that everyone should dress warmly for a surprise before dinner. "Where are we going, Pa?" Emma asked as they bundled into coats and scarves. "You'll see," he replied mysteriously, helping Sophia with her cloak. He led them to the barn where a large sleigh waited, polished to a shine and fitted with bells. The children squealed in delight as Wade helped them aboard, then carefully assisted Sophia, whose ankle had nearly healed but still required caution. "Where did this come from?" she asked as he settled beside her, taking up the reins. "Been storing it at Peterson's place," he admitted. "Belonged to my father. Thought it was time to bring it back into service." The sleigh ride through the snow-covered valley became an instant memory Sophia knew she would treasure forever. The children's faces alight with joy, the musical jingle of bells, Wade's strong presence beside her as he guided the horses with confident hands. They sang carols and pointed out wildlife tracks, creating new traditions with each passing moment. When they returned, rosy-cheeked and laughing, dinner waited, a feast that Mrs. Abernathy declared her finest Christmas effort. They ate by candlelight, the table adorned with evergreens and pine cones Sophia had arranged. Wade, at the head of the table, looked around at their faces with an expression of profound contentment that made Sophia's heart swell. After dinner, they gathered in the parlor where a tall pine tree stood decorated with ornaments old and new, some treasured from Wade's childhood, others made by the children under Sophia's guidance. Presents nestled beneath, wrapped in colorful paper ordered specially from the general store. "Can we open one tonight?" Billy pleaded. "Just one." Wade glanced at Sophia, who nodded. "I believe that's traditional," she agreed. "One gift on Christmas Eve." The children selected packages with great deliberation. Billy chose one from Sophia, a carved wooden horse that made him gasp with delight. Emma unwrapped a book of poetry from her father, thanking him with a fierce hug. When the children had examined their treasures thoroughly, Wade cleared his throat. "I believe there's one more gift that can't wait until morning." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small package wrapped in silver paper, offering it to Sophia with an expression that made her heart race. "Wade?" she questioned softly. "Open it," he encouraged. With trembling fingers, Sophia unwrapped the gift. Inside lay a small velvet box. The children grew suddenly quiet, watching with wide eyes as she lifted the lid to reveal a gold ring set with a single perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my grandmother's," Wade said, his voice husky with emotion. "My grandfather gave it to her when they homesteaded this land. They built something lasting here, against all odds." He took the box from her hands and knelt before her, as the children gasped in delight. "Sophia Whitman, you came here to teach my children, but you've given us all so much more. You've brought light back to this house and to my heart when I thought both were lost for good." His eyes held hers, steady and certain. "I love you. The children love you. Will you marry me and make this family complete?" Tears blurred Sophia's vision as joy overwhelmed her. The journey that had brought her to Montana, seeking purpose and independence, had led to something she hadn't known she was searching for: a family, a home, a love that had healed them all. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." Wade slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her into an embrace as the children cheered and Mrs. Abernathy appeared in the doorway, wiping tears from her eyes. "Does this mean Miss Whitman will be our mother now?" Billy asked, bouncing with excitement. Wade looked to Sophia, his eyes filled with love. "What do you think? Ready to be a mother as well as a teacher?" Sophia opened her arms to the children, who rushed into her embrace. "I would be honored," she told them, her voice thick with emotion. "Nothing would make me happier." As the children hugged her fiercely, Wade looked on, his expression one of wonder and gratitude. In that moment, surrounded by the family they had built together, Sophia knew with certainty that the frontier had given her not harshness, but the greatest gift of all, a love strong enough to heal past wounds and brave enough to face whatever the future might bring. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent, blanketing the ranch in pristine white, a clean page upon which their new life together would be written. The wedding took place on New Year's Day, 1883, a deliberate choice that Wade and Sophia made together, symbolizing their fresh beginning. The small church in Silver Creek overflowed with townsfolk and neighboring ranchers, all eager to witness the union that had been the subject of hopeful speculation for months. Sophia wore a gown of ivory satin with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, ordered from Denver with Mrs. Peterson's assistance. Her chestnut hair was arranged in an elegant style adorned with small white flowers that Emma had helped select. As she walked down the aisle on Sheriff Riley's arm, who had proudly accepted the honor of giving her away, her eyes found Wade's, and the look of reverent joy on his face told her everything she needed to know about the path they had chosen together. Wade stood tall in a new black suit, his sandy hair neatly trimmed, his green eyes never leaving Sophia's face as she approached. Billy stood beside him as best man, solemnly holding the ring on a small pillow, while Emma waited near the altar as maid of honor, practically vibrating with happiness. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Clark began, his voice carrying through the hushed church, "we are gathered here to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." The ceremony was simple but profound. When Wade spoke his vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish Sophia for all the days of his life, his voice rang with absolute certainty. When Sophia responded in kind, she felt the rightness of their union settle into her bones, as true and enduring as the mountains that surrounded their home. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the Reverend declared. "Mr. Kincaid, you may kiss your bride." Wade's kiss was gentle yet possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. As they turned to face their friends and family, Emma and Billy rushed forward to embrace them both, transforming the traditional recessional into a family procession that drew emotional smiles from everyone present. The celebration afterward filled the town hall with music, laughter, and abundant food contributed by every household in the community. Wade, normally reserved in public, kept Sophia close throughout, his hand rarely leaving hers as they accepted congratulations and well wishes. "Told you," Sheriff Riley said smugly when he claimed a dance with the bride. "Knew from the moment you stepped off that stagecoach that you'd be the making of him." Sophia laughed. "Was I that transparent?" "Not at all," Riley assured her. "But I've known Wade since we were boys. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you. like a man who'd found something he thought was lost forever. When it came time to depart, the children clung to them briefly before Mrs. Abernathy gently reminded them that their parents would return in just 3 days. "We're only going to Helena," Wade assured them. "Not halfway across the territory. And we'll bring you both something special," Sophia promised, kissing their foreheads. "Be good for Mrs. Abernathy." As they rode away in the sleigh, surrounded by well-wishers calling farewells and good-natured teasing, Wade tucked the blanket more securely around Sophia and pressed a kiss to her temple. "Happy?" he asked, his breath forming a cloud in the winter air. Sophia leaned against his shoulder, watching the town recede behind them as the snow-covered landscape opened before them, vast and beautiful, full of possibility. "Completely," she answered, turning to meet his gaze. "This wasn't what I expected when I came west, but it's everything I never knew I wanted." Wade's arm tightened around her. "That schoolteacher from Boston taught me something important, you know." "What's that, Mr. Kincaid?" she asked, smiling up at him. "That sometimes the greatest courage isn't facing danger," he said softly. "It's opening your heart when you're afraid of being broken." His eyes held hers, filled with love and certainty. "I'm not afraid anymore, Sophia. Not with you." As they continued toward Helena and the brief honeymoon that awaited them, the setting sun painted the snow-covered mountains in gold and rose. Behind them lay the past with its sorrows and losses. Ahead stretched a future they would build together. A family united, a love-hard one on the frontier that had tested them both and found them worthy. Sophia Kincaid nestled closer to her husband, savoring the moment and all it represented. She had come to Montana to teach children, never imagining she would learn the most important lesson of all, that love, once found, could transform even the harshest landscape into the most beautiful home.